Let's talk family. Let's talk family about the things that impact us as individual family members, as a whole, as a community family, and as a country family. Let's Talk Family Life. Let's Talk Family is a program brought to you by Family Life Ministries. Family Life Ministries is a counseling organization that primarily offers individual, family, and relationship counseling. We have counselors who are available to speak on a number of subjects for your conferences for church, school, or work. Family Life Ministries is also known for its media programs, the divorce recovery program Fresh Start, and its company counseling package, the Employee Assistance Program. Visit our website at www.familylifeministriesjamaica.com. Find us on Facebook at FLM Family Life Ministries or on Instagram at FLMJA, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries FLMJA. We'll give our numbers at the end of this program. Now here's today's episode of Let's Talk Family.
Welcome to Let's Talk Family. I'm your host, Halcyon Reed. Today, let's look at these verses, Matthew 18, verse 2 and verse 3. He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, "Truly, I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Good evening, everyone. One meaning of the word abuse is to treat with cruelty or violence, especially regularly or repeatedly. Put the word child before that, and it takes a whole new level of sadness, distress, and urgency. But what does child abuse look like and feel like? Here to help us answer that question is Pauline Bain, counseling psychologist. Welcome, Mrs. Bain.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
What are the different types of abuse?
Well, there's physical abuse, there's emotional or psychological abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect.
And how do we know which one is which?
Okay, physical abuse is easy for us to determine because it's usually somebody is beating the child, somebody is hurting the child. This could be burns. Sometimes children appear with burns and they tell you that somebody used the fire from the cigarette to burn them, or an iron. There have been cases in Jamaica where a parent will burn the child with iron or put the child's hand in fire.
That's quite cruel.
It is very cruel. So physical beatings where the child ends up with cuts and bruises, very easy to see.
So the signs of physical abuse are usually visual. You can see them.
That's right.
But can a child be physically abused, but there are none of these signs, no scars, nothing to show physically?
Hardly, except that sometimes the parents cover it up.
So if I slap my child on the arm, that's not abuse because I didn't leave a scar, is it?
If you slap your child, it depends on how hard. And I would say to parents, avoid the slapping, and especially using your hand. My take on using your hand is that hands are for caressing, hands are for soothing and comforting, and should not be used to hit a child. But if you hit a child with your hand, you have to be careful because you are a big person with a big, heavy hand and you hit a child, it could be quite a heavy blow. So that would be abusive also.
Right. So let's hear about emotional abuse. What sort of signs do we have for those? What do we see?
Okay. For emotional abuse, the child often is withdrawn, reserved. The child is fearful. Sometimes the child lies. Sometimes the child begins to steal. So it's all that's coming out of the child's emotions because they are unhappy. They don't like themselves. So emotional abuse is related to the things we say to our children and how it affects them.
Okay. And what are the signs of sexual abuse?
Now, sexual abuse, we cannot see it without checking the child physically. For example, children can be sexually abused, but they can also be sexually groomed so that the person is trying to get the child to like them and so that they can abuse them eventually. Children can be sexually harassed, and they can also be not sexually abused, can be penetration, but it also can be touching, and child is uncomfortable about that.
So if we don't examine the child, for instance, and, it's probably just fondling and so on, how can we see that otherwise?
Well, the child sometimes begins to show signs of not wanting to eat, not wanting to do the things they like to doing, looking sad. If we see this change in the child's behavior, we need to check to find out what is happening to the child.
Okay.
The child also may not be performing well at school because the child is worried. The child doesn't want to tell anyone about it and keeps it. And so the child does not function as a happy child.
Right. So sometimes sexual abuse lead to emotional abuse as well. The same signs you may see.
Yes, they will have the signs of a child who is emotionally abused, because being sexually abused also affects the child's emotions.
Right. You mentioned some of them. How do you know that a child is being neglected? And a lot of persons probably don't know that neglect is a type of abuse, but it is.
Yes, neglect is abuse. If you decide you're not going to give the child food or give the child less, and I hear people say no food tonight because you did something wrong, that is neglect. Neglect also is not caring for the child to make sure the child is clean, and the child goes to school. Sometimes neglect affects the child going to school, so you decide, oh, you don't have to go to school. So the child is at home. So all of those things are involved in neglect.
Right. And sometimes it shows physically, nails dirty, hair not combed.
Exactly.
That sort of thing. All right. So if it happens to one child, is it happening to all children in the home or in the situation?
Not necessarily so, but sometimes it's happening to everybody. So if there are 2 or 3 children in the house, all of them may be abused, but not necessarily so. Sometimes the abuser picks on one child. And sometimes it's the youngest, sometimes it's the eldest child who gets abused. It may be you look like somebody who used to abuse me, so I pick on you. And the thing about it, sometimes the abuser does not even know why they do what they do.
And could there be a situation where parents are apart, but this child looks so much like the other parent that, they just decide that I'm going to abuse this child?
Oh, that happens. Some of the things that parents say to children, you're ugly and good for nothing, like your worthless mother or your worthless papa, your mother gone away and leave me. So they do it and they're not even aware until somebody points it out to them.
Right. Can a child be experiencing more than one of these types of abuse at a time?
Oh, yes. And especially if it is neglect or sexual abuse, it affects the child emotionally.
Right.
And if the child is having physical abuse, it affects the child emotionally. So it's possible that the child is feeling abuse in each of these areas.
Right. So what are the laws that now exist to protect the abused child?
Yes, there are laws, but I'm not sure how well they work for our parents and children. For example, if a parent abuses a child, the parent can be brought before the court and be charged. But sometimes this doesn't happen because you're not sure how to do it. Definitely for people who interact with children, doctors, nurses, dentists, psychologists, teachers, if you think that the child is being abused, you are required by law to report it to the Children's Registry. And the Children's Registry should manage the situation. Sometimes action takes a very, very, very long time or no action at all. And I'm a bit concerned about that.
Right. So outside of parents, you may have an abuser outside of the home. What are some of the laws that exist to deal with these kinds of abuses? For instance, a pedophile that's outside of the home abusing your child. What are the laws that exist for that?
If the person caring for the child becomes aware that the child is being abused, this again can be reported to the children's registry and to the police. And the thing about it is that after you have reported it, sometimes you never hear anything again what has happened. And this is one of my concerns, that I'm not sure that when I make a report, something has taken place, because I never hear about the case again.
Right.
But the laws are that these people are to be punished once you can prove it, that they are abusing children.
And what about teachers? Do abusive teachers get punished for abusing their children?
I am so happy that in the last few years there have been a few teachers who have been brought before the court for either beating children or sexually abusing children. And I think this is important. I hope that it sends a message to those who would want to continue abusing children that we're very serious in Jamaica. If you abuse a child, it has to be reported by the person who knows, and that you're brought before the courts.
Thank you, Mrs. Bain. Abuse is a difficult thing to address, but we must root it out, and I hope we've helped you to identify it when you see or even suspect it. Thanks for listening. I'm Halcyon Reed, and this was Let's Talk Family. Good evening, and remember to stay safe and to care for others like you would want to be cared for. Blessings.
And you feel my life, you're everything to me, and there's nothing else I need anymore.
This was Let's Talk Family, a production of Family Life Ministries. If you or anyone you know would like advice and counseling, call us or head office at 1 Cecilio Avenue at 876-926-8101, 876-929-4360, or 876-920-1034, or center in Port Moore at 117 Cecile Avenue at 876-939-7917.
This program was produced at the studio of the United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, located at 12 Carlton Crescent, Kingston 10. Call us at 876-926-6059 for your voiceover and broadcasting needs.